Today we're going to discuss the biggest narcissistic cult ever, online or offline. It's enormous. Tens of millions of participants, hundreds of millions, possibly billions, of users with access to the cult and its machinations. And I'm talking about Wikipedia. My name is Sam Vaknin. I'm the author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. And I'm going to enumerate my credentials, my academic credentials right now, because it's relevant for the continuation of the video. I'm a professor of psychology and a professor of business management in the Commonwealth Institute in Cambridge, United Kingdom. I'm a former visiting professor of psychology for 5 years in Southern Federal University in Rostov-on-Don in Russia. And I'm currently a visiting professor of psychology and a visiting professor of economics in Southeast European University in North Macedonia. These are my academic affiliations. I'm an editor-in-chief of about 8 or 9 academic journals, and I am an editor, a member of the editorial board of another 100. About 1/3 of these are peer-reviewed, another 1/3 are open access. What else do you need to know? I'm on the organizing committee of well over 200 international conferences all over the world. So I know a bit about academia and research and publishing and peer review and all this. I've also worked hand in hand for several years with the Encyclopedia Britannica. So I also know a lot about encyclopedias firsthand from the inside. The best encyclopedia in human history, Encyclopedia Britannica. I mentioned all these credentials because they are super relevant to the video you're about to watch. I'm about to criticize an enterprise claiming to be an encyclopedia, a narcissistic cult masquerading as an encyclopedia, and also claiming to be an academic endeavor, equivalent of, for example, a research peer-reviewed journal. These are the claims of Wikipedia. I'm going to debunk all of them one by one, and I'm going to expose the underbelly of this seriously flawed group of people and what they're doing. I think they were the ones who first contaminated the space of information online. They were the first ones to purvey and propagate and distribute misinformation, fake news, and false information. And I think they constituted both the fundament and foundation of similar things being perpetrated by artificial intelligence chatbots nowadays, because artificial intelligence chatbots rely on content of Wikipedia. And also Wikipedia legitimized many similar enterprises in alternative media, as it's called, non-mainstream media. So Wikipedia, to cut a long story short, is the mother and father and lineage and ancestor of everything today that we see in the sphere of information. The pollution, misinformation, fake news, it all started with Wikipedia. And how do I know? I know because under the true founder of Wikipedia, Larry Sanger, I was amongst the first contributors. At the time, it wasn't called Wikipedia, because it was called Nupedia. Nupedia was Wikipedia's predecessor, but it was peer-reviewed. We had a very strict process of peer review. And then later on, Jimmy Wales took over, sidelined Larry Sanger, ousted him in effect, and converted Nupedia into Wikipedia, the crowdsourcing platform. I spent many years on and off studying Wikipedia until I completely gave up on it and moved on. Interestingly, recently, artificial intelligence chatbots are warning about Wikipedia. They cast Wikipedia as an unreliable resource. Now, mind you, artificial intelligence chatbots use Wikipedia's content overwhelmingly, but they're warning against it. They issue it with a disclaimer. Try it out for yourself. In the English version of Wikipedia, there are only 500 active editors. These are editors who make more than 100 edits a year. 500, that's all, out of 50 million registered users. It is therefore no longer a crowd-sourced resource, because 500 is not a crowd, but it is a closed, delusional, fantasy-prone cult, or in clinical terms, a shared fantasy, a narcissistic shared fantasy. Let me read to you how one of the preeminent Wikipedians presents herself. I'm saying herself because she claims to be a female and she claims to be from Montreal. There's no way to verify this. Wikipedia is utterly anonymous and does not insist on any ID documents or anything. Anyone can claim to be anything. We'll come to it a bit later. But SLP1, who claims to be a female from Quebec, Montreal, has this to say about herself. I tend to edit articles that take my fancy, and these articles have no connection to my professional and academic background. She's proud of it. Let me read this incredible sentence by an editor of an encyclopedia. Absolutely mind-boggling, breathtakingly arrogant and impertinent sentence. I tend to edit articles that take my fancy and have no connection to my professional and academic background. Proudly said. And this is the culture of Wikipedia. It's a cult with cult leaders and arcane, obscure, deliberately obfuscating language and procedures. Far more cumbersome than any university I've ever served in, any research lab protocols that I'm aware of, any peer-reviewed journal. All these institutions accomplish research. All these institutions add to human knowledge. None of them has 1% of the mountain range of obstacles to entry, barriers to entry, that Wikipedia does. Wikipedia has become an exclusionary and xenophobic in-group, also known as cult. People who are regularly excluded, or at least moderated in every other internet community, mostly rabid narcissists, to call a spade, are welcomed, no questions asked, by this wannabe self-styled encyclopedia. And then they rise to the top within this narcissistic cesspool. Let's go back to history. Go back a few steps. There's nothing new about the collaborative model that is Wikipedia. Before the age of Gutenberg, copyists, usually found in monasteries, in scriptoria, used to add their notes and comments to the text that they were copying as they went along, without indicating which is the original and which are their own contributions. The Talmud has been crowdsourced from hundreds of luminaries over centuries. Its layout resembles the World Wide Web, with text hyperlinks to boot. The Oxford English Dictionary, first published in 1928, was the outcome of 70 years of combined efforts of 2,000 zealous and industrious volunteers. The difference between Wikipedia and the Oxford English Dictionary is that the latter appointed editors to oversee and tutor these teeming hordes of wannabe scholars. They were gatekeepers. In all these enterprises, there were gatekeepers. Wikipedia has none. What Wikipedia is self-styled editors who openly brag that they know nothing about the topics they're editing. It's the anathema, antithesis, and antonym of an encyclopedia. The concept of mob wisdom or crowdsourcing is equally dated, actually, nothing new. Ancient Greek and Egyptian luminaries from Eratosthenes to Ptolemy relied on eyewitness accounts of travelers to compose their enduring, albeit utterly erroneous, masterpieces. The distinction between layman and expert is a modern invention, an aberration in historical terms. Even so, every scholarly article and book submitted for publication first goes through peer review, scrutiny by qualified experts who suggest additions and amendments to the material. Once published, authors frequently act on input by academics and the wider public. They issue errata, revisions, and new editions to reflect this newly gained knowledge. Here's what Jonathan Citrain had to say in The Internet is Rotting, published in The Atlantic, June 30th, 2021. Before today's Internet, the primary way to preserve something for the ages was to consign it to writing. First on stone, then parchment, then papyrus, then 20-pound acid-free paper, then a tape drive, floppy disk, or hard disk platter, and store the result in a temple or a library, a building designed to guard it against rot, theft, war, and natural disaster. This approach has facilitated preservation of some material for thousands of years. Ideally, there would be multiple identical copies stored in multiple libraries so that the failure of one storehouse wouldn't extinguish the knowledge within. And in rare instances in which the document was surreptitiously altered, it could be compared against copies elsewhere to detect and correct the change, kind of blockchain, early prototypical blockchain technology, a distributed ledger, if you wish. Wikipedia differs from traditional outsourcing in that it is indiscriminate. The qualifications, education, experience, and credentials, expertise of its contributors are frequently ignored or even derided and decried. Wikipedia is thus subject to the tyranny of the often narcissistic user or the community and their weapons. Arbitrary editing is weaponized. Arbitrary ball or hatchet reversions of texts, malicious smears, impersonation, sock puppetry, and other underhanded tactics. Wikipedia is a meritocracy of passive aggressiveness. The more ego-driven you are, the more passive-aggressive you are, the more likely you are to rise to the top. 6 cardinal and in the long-term deadly sins plague Wikipedia. What unites and underlies all its deficiencies is simple. Wikipedia dissembles about what lies about what it is and how it operates. It is a self-righteous confabulation, and its success in deceiving the many attests not only to the gullibility of the vast majority of netizens, but to the public relations savvy of its slick operations. So let's start to unravel Wikipedia. Number 1, Wikipedia is opaque and encourages recklessness. The overwhelming majority of contributors to and editors of Wikipedia remain anonymous or pseudonymous throughout the process. Anyone can register, and members' screen names, handles, mean nothing and lead nowhere. And so no one is forced to take responsibility for what he or she adds to the encyclopedia or subtracts from it. This amounts to an impenetrable smokescreen. Identities can rarely be established, and evading the legal consequences of one's actions or omissions is easy. As the exposure of the confabulated professional biography of Wikipedia arbitrator SJ in March 2007 demonstrates, some prominent editors and senior administrators probably claim fake credentials as well, or, as we have seen in the case of SLP1, brag about not having any credentials whatsoever in the articles, in the topics, with regards to the topics that they're editing. A software tool developed and posted online in mid-2007, a wiki scanner, unearthed tens of thousands of self-interested edits by contributors as diverse as the CIA, the Canadian government, and Disney. This followed in the wake of a spate of scandals involving biased and tainted edits by political staffers and pranksters. Everything in Wikipedia can be, and frequently is, edited, rewritten, erased, reverted, re-reverted, undone, and you name it. And this includes the talk pages, and even to my utter amazement, in some cases, the history pages. In other words, one cannot gain an impartial view of the editorial process by sifting through the talk and history pages of articles, most of which are typically monopolized by fiercely territorial editors who shoo off anyone who dares to try to contribute to their articles. History, not unlike in certain authoritarian regimes, is being constantly rejigged on Wikipedia. Problem number 2. Wikipedia is totalitarian, not democratic, or even anarchic. Wikipedia is not an experiment in online democracy, but a form of pernicious populist authoritarianism. Wikipedia has been the harbinger of many things we are seeing today all over the world. Populism, authoritarianism, strong-arm tactics, censorship, fake news, misinformation. All these were the foundations of Wikipedia. These are not bugs, these are features, structural features, procedural features. Wikipedia espouses two misconceptions. Number one, that chaos can and does lead to the generation of artifacts with lasting value. Number two, that knowledge is an emergent mass phenomenon. But Wikipedia is not conducive to the unfettered exchange of information and opinion that is a prerequisite to both A and B, to both 1 and 2. Wikipedia is a war zone. It's a battlefield where many fear to tread. Wikipedia is a negative filter. And this leads to the next point. Might is right editorial principle. Lacking quality control by design, Wikipedia rewards quantity. The more one posts and interacts with others, the higher one's status within the community, within the cult, both informal status and formal status. In the Wikipedia planet, authority is a function of the number of edits, no matter how frivolous. In other words, if you add 80,000 commas to articles, you rise to the top. Wikipedia even has an elaborate structure of medals and rewards and ribbons, and which is very reminiscent of Soviet Russia. The more aggressive or even violent a user is, the more prone to flame, bully, and harass, the more inclined to form coalitions with like-minded trolls, the less of a life this user has outside Wikipedia, the more they are likely to end up being administrators and top editors. The result is erratic editing and highly unstable entries. Many entries are completely rewritten, not to say vandalized, by a handful of power-hungry narcissistic editors and administrators on a permanent ego trip. Contrary to advertently fostered impressions, the Wikipedia is not a cumulative process. The text of Wikipedia goes through dizzyingly rapid and oft-repeated cycles of destruction, and the initial contributions are at times far deeper and more comprehensive than later so-called edited editions of the same. Entries are written, totally demolished, rewritten, totally reverted, destroyed, written again, time and again, and there's never consensus, there's never stability, it leads nowhere. You can see the traces of these edit wars in the talk pages and the history pages, the ones that are not censored, at least. Wikipedia is misrepresented as an open source endeavor. Nothing can be further from the truth. Open source efforts, such as Linux, involve a group of last instance decision makers. These last instance decision makers, the court of last resort, the Supreme Court, if you wish, they coordinate, these people coordinate, vet, they cull the flow of suggestions, improvements, criticism, and offers from the public. They are gatekeepers. Open source communities are hierarchical, not stochastic, and never autocratic like Wikipedia. Moreover, it is far easier to evaluate the quality of a given snippet of software code than it is to judge the truth content of an edit to an article, especially if it deals with soft and fuzzy topics, which involve the weighing of opinions and the well-informed exercise of value judgments. Number 3, Wikipedia is against real knowledge. Wikipedia STEM articles, science, technology, mathematics, STEM articles are relatively trustworthy. Studies have shown that they are equal in quality to the Britannica's articles. But these are only the STEM articles, articles that deal with hard sciences such as chemistry and biology and neuroscience and mathematics and physics and so on. Everything else, which is the majority of the articles, including biographies, is highly questionable. Wikipedia's ethos is malignantly anti-elitist. Experts are scorned, rebuffed, attacked, and abused, chased out of the community with official sanction and blessing. The vitriol and diatribes are celebrated. Since everyone is assumed to be equally qualified to edit and contribute, no one is entitled to a privileged position by virtue of scholarships, academic credentials, or even life experience. Bias and prejudice are rampant and all-pervasive, especially in articles that deal with history, politics, and issues such as gender and sexuality. Wikipedia is the epitome and reification of an ominous trend. Internet surfing came to replace real, true, deep, profound research. Online eclecticism supplanted scholarship, and trivia passes for erudition. Everyone is an instant scholar. If you know how to use a search engine, you're an authority. I call it malignant egalitarianism. Wikipedians boast that the articles in their so-called encyclopedia are replete with citations and references. But citations from which sources? And references to which works, which authors? Absent the relevant academic credentials and education, how can an editor tell the difference between information and disinformation, quacks, and authorities, charlatans and scholars and experts, facts and hearsay, truth and confabulation? You need to know what you're talking about. You need to adjudicate based on deep education. SLP1, who brags about not knowing the first thing about the articles she edits, is exactly the case in point. If she knows nothing about the articles she edits, how does she dare edit them? How does she decide which sources are reliable? How does she know which citations to preserve and which citations to omit? They're coming to pick her up. So, editors without the necessary credentials and background should never be allowed to touch articles in fields in which they have no knowledge. And yet this is the norm in Wikipedia. In Wikipedia, the vast majority of editors, perhaps all editors, edit articles they know nothing about. And they make decisions about which sources are reliable, which citations should be included and which excluded, based on what? Gut instinct, intuition, consensus? That's not the way you build an encyclopedia. That's the way you build a trivia house. That's the way you end up having a Reddit or a Quora. Nothing wrong with Reddit and Quora, but they are not claiming to be encyclopedias. Knowledge is not comprised of lists of facts, lists of so-called facts, factoids and rumors, the bread and butter of Wikipedia. Real facts have to be verified, classified, and arranged within a historical and cultural context, and only then do these facts become knowledge. It's a process of transmutation via structure, and structure that relies on prior knowledge. Wikipedia articles read like laundry lists of information gleaned from secondary sources, and they invariably lack context and deep, true understanding of their subject matter. A big portion is completely wrong, misinformation, disinformation, and bias. Wikipedia is at best a sampling of raw material, and artificial intelligence chatbots are much more accomplished at this kind of hoarding than Wikipedia is. Can teenagers write an encyclopedia? This is a relevant question. The vast majority of Wikipedia contributors and editors are under the age of 25. Many of the administrators, senior editors, are in their teens. This has been established by a survey conducted in 2003 and in various recent interviews by Jimmy Wales, the co-founder of the enterprise and its adulterator-in-chief. The truth is that teenagers cannot do the referencing and research that are the prerequisite for serious scholarship, unless you stretch these words to an absurd limit. Research is not about hoarding facts. It is about identifying and applying context and about possessing a synoptic view of ostensibly unrelated data. Teenagers cannot tell hype from fact and fad from fixture. Teenagers lack the perspectives that life and learning, structured, frontal, hierarchical learning, bring with them. They don't even have life experience. Knowledge is not another democratic institution subject to voting. It is hierarchical for good reason. And the hierarchy is built on merit, and the merit is founded on learning, and the learning is built on structure. The structure relies on prior knowledge. And it takes many years to get there. And a teenager can't do it. Simply can't do it. It is not surprising that Wikipedia emerged in the United States, whose so-called culture consists of truncated attention spans, snippets, sound bites, shortcuts, and cliff notes. Wikipedia is a pernicious countercultural phenomenon. It does not elevate or celebrate knowledge. Wikipedia degrades knowledge by commoditizing it and by removing all relevant filters, all credentialed gatekeepers, and the barriers to entry that have proven so essential hitherto. Ironically, Wikipedia imposes barriers to entry which are procedural in nature and are intended to preserve the power of the cabal or the clique that controls Wikipedia. There are no barriers to entry when it comes to knowledge and credentials. There's no gatekeeping. Let me give you an example. Recently, on a discussion list dedicated to psychology, with a largely academic membership, I pointed out a glaring rookie error in one of Wikipedia's articles. I also provided the source. I provided 20 books, academic books, and peer-reviewed academic journal articles, all of them claiming the exact opposite of the statement in Wikipedia. The responses I received were chilling. I have to add that most of the people on the list are Americans. One member told me that he uses Wikipedia to get a rough idea about topics that are not worth the time needed to visit the library or do research. Whether the rough ideas he's getting from Wikipedia were correct or counterfactual seemed not to matter to him. He couldn't care less. Others expressed a mystical belief in the veracity of knowledge, so-called knowledge, assembled by the masses of anonymous contributors to Wikipedia. Everyone professed to prefer the content offered by Wikipedia to the information afforded by the Encyclopedia Britannica, which is written 100% by experts established in their fields. Yes, you heard me correctly. A group of academics, thousands of them, most of them Americans, prefer Wikipedia to Britannica. That's So Wikipedia is an American phenomenon. Two members attempted to disprove my assertion regarding the error in Wikipedia by pointing to a haphazard selection of links on the internet. Not one of them referred to a reputable authority on the subject or to a book. Yet, based largely on Wikipedia and a sporadic trip in cyberspace, they felt sufficiently confident to challenge my observation, which was supported, as may I remind you, virtually by all leading luminaries in the field. Now, there are Wikipedias in other languages, but they are nowhere near the English Wikipedia, which is 100% an American phenomenon. These gut reactions by academics mirror Wikipedia's editorial process. To the best of my knowledge, none of my respondents on the forum was qualified to comment on the particular topic, actually. None of them held a relevant academic degree. But in my comment, I strove to stand on the shoulders of giants. I didn't claim to be an authority. I claimed that others are authorities. I spotted an error. But my correspondents explicitly and proudly refused to do so as a matter of principle. They trusted the wisdom of the masses, wisdom of a crowd. This may reflect the difference in academic traditions between the United States and the rest of the world. Members of individualistic, self-reliant, and narcissistic societies inevitably rebel against authority. They are contumacious. They tend to believe in their own omnipotence and omniscience. This culminated in the United States with the MAGA movement and the far-right and conservative movement. Conversely, the denizens of more collectivist and consensus-seeking countries and cultures are less sanguine, less grandiose, and more willing to accept teachings ex cathedra. I didn't say that. Theodore Millen said it, a great scholar and an undisputed authority on personality disorders. He suggested that narcissistic personality disorder is a limited American phenomenon. Number 4, Wikipedia is not an encyclopedia. End of story. Truth in advertising is not Wikipedia's strong suit. It presents itself egregiously as an encyclopedia. Yet at best, it is a community of users who exchange eclectic so-called information on a regular and structured basis. Wikipedia is way closer to Reddit or Quora than to the Britannica, I'm sorry to say. This deliberate misrepresentation snags most occasional visitors who are not acquainted with the arcane ways of Wikipedia and trust Wikipedia implicitly and explicitly to deliver facts and well-founded opinions. May I add that most people have never been exposed to a real encyclopedia. Real encyclopedias are extinct by now. There is a lot Wikipedia can do to dispel such dangerous misconceptions about itself. For example, it could post disclaimers on all its articles, and not only on a few selected pages. That it chooses to propagate the deception, that it keeps telling people that it is an encyclopedia, renders it the equivalent of an intellectual scam, a colossal act of con artistry. It also pays, of course. Wikipedia and Wikimedia rely on millions in donations, and they are tax exempt in the United States. Quite a business. Wikipedia thus retards genuine learning by serving as the path of least resistance and as a substitute to the real thing. Edited, peer-reviewed works of reference are ignored. High school and university students now make Wikipedia and artificial intelligence not only their first, but their exclusive research destination. It's far easier than bothering to go to the library or trawling through a 700-page book. Moreover, Wikipedia's content is often reproduced on thousands of other websites without any of Wikipedia's disclaimers and without attribution or identification of the source. The other day I visited a website proffering a free encyclopedia. Excited, I clicked on it. It was a mirror of Wikipedia, but without anything to indicate. that it is not a true, authoritative, peer-reviewed encyclopedia. The origin of the articles, Wikipedia, was not indicated clearly. It could have been different. Consider, for instance, the online and free Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, or even the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Each entry is written by an expert, but is frequently revised based on input from members of the public and other experts. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy and the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy combine the best elements of Wikipedia, feedback-driven evolution of the articles, with none of Wikipedia's deficiencies. But it's not a commercial enterprise, so who cares? Even the Encyclopedia Britannica has implemented a crowdsourcing model, but it is curated by scholars. And there are other online projects, such as Citizendium and Scholarpedia, which are far more reliable than Wikipedia. And yet they didn't take off, because they don't have the public relations insolence of Wikipedia, and they're not willing to deceive the public. Number 6, Wikipedia is rife with libel and violations of copyright. As recent events clearly demonstrate, Wikipedia is a hotbed of slander and libel. It is regularly manipulated by interns, political staffers, public relation consultants, marketing personnel, special interest groups, political parties, business firms, brand managers, and countries, others with an axe to grind. Wikipedia serves as a platform for settling personal and political accounts, defaming, distorting the truth, and rewriting history. Less known is the fact that Wikipedia is potentially and arguably the greatest single repository of copyright infringements. A study conducted in 2006 put the number of completely plagiarized articles at 1% of the total. Books, from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual through David Irving's controversial work, are regularly ripped off, and sizable chunks are posted in various articles with and without attribution. That applies to articles online as well. They're copy-pasted into Wikipedia without permission. Wikipedia resembles P2P networks, such as the first incarnation of Napster. Wikipedia allows users to illegally share pirated content using the application Wiki and the central website, Wikipedia. In this sense, I can't truly see a big difference between Wikipedia and Library Genesis, or perhaps Sci-Hub. In reality, despite its ostentatious and ostensible mediation and dispute arbitration mechanisms, Wikipedia does not provide any effective mechanism to redress wrongs, address problems, and remedy libel and copyright infringements. Wikipedia favors administrators and top editors and suppresses dissent. Editing the offending articles is useless, as these are often restored by the offenders themselves. Even when wrongs are righted, the libel, for example, persists in the talk pages. Wikipedia has been legally shielded from litigation because hitherto it enjoyed the same status that bulletin board services and other free-for-all communities have. It's like a social medium, the same status like Meta or Twitter. In short, there is no editorial oversight exerted. No legal liability arises. Wikipedia's claim is that the articles are not edited. There's no oversight. That it's a free-for-all. It's a forum, and so there's no legal liability to the host, even in cases of proven libel and breaches of copyright. But this claim is false, is a lie. It's a deception. Of course Wikipedia is edited rigorously, closely, structurally, by a tiny group of 500 utterly identifiable people. They are anonymous online, but law enforcement can easily find their identities. Wikipedia has been treading a thin line here as well. Anyone who ever tried to contribute to this so-called encyclopedia discovered soon enough that it is micromanaged by a cabal of about 500 administrators, not to mention Wikimedia's full-time staff, fueled by millions of dollars in public donations. These senior editors regularly interfere in the contents of articles, thousands of them. They do so often without any rhyme or reason and on a whim, hence the chaos. But edit they do. They have editorial power and they exercise it. Therefore, Wikipedia is liable and should not be shielded. The fact and statements by whales that to the effect that Wikipedia is actually regularly edited may provoke victims of Wikipedia into considering class action lawsuits against Wikimedia, Jimmy Wales personally, and their web hosting company, if not Wikipedia. There are already initiatives, including by Larry Sanger, to either revoke the tax exemption of Wikimedia or to force Wikipedia to become way less biased and dictatorial in the so-called editing process. Wikipedia is an edited publication. Its staff is even smaller than many mainstream media. The New York Times is responsible for anything it publishes in its op-ed section. Radio stations pay fines for airing obscenities in call-in shows. Why treat Wikipedia any differently? Perhaps if it is hit in its wallet, Wikipedia will develop the minimal norms of responsibility and truthfulness that are routinely expected of less presumptuous and more inconspicuous undertakings on the internet and in real life.